my name's Amanda and welcome to block number 3 in my Half Square Triangle Sampler Quilt Along with Me series. So the third block that we will be making is this one. It is called the Contrary Wife block. So just like all of the blocks in this series, the block is made out of 4 half square triangles and then it has 5 simple squares that you then piece it all together in a 9 patch construction. As always, you will find all of the measurement and cutting instructions for this block in the description box below, as well as on the pattern sheet that is also linked. You'll also see all of the fabrics that I'm using in this block if you are interested in knowing that. So let's get straight into it. This is how you make the Contrary Wife block. In block number 3, I'm using the Blue Sky Solid for the background, with the Blossom and XOXO Basics in Pink Cheeks for the half square triangles. So to make the Contrary Wife block, you will need to cut 5 4.5 inch squares from your background fabric and then 2 5-inch squares from each of the contrasting print fabrics. Begin the block by making 4 half square triangle units. To do this, mark a line on the wrong side of 2 of the 5-inch squares using a ruler and pencil. Evenly pair these with the 2 other 5-inch squares, right sides facing, and then pin them together. Sew a 1/4 inch seam to the left of the line on one and then gently feed through the other pair of squares. After reaching the end, turn the pieced squares around and sew one more 1/4 inch seam along the other side of the line. Snip the joining threads and then cut each square in half along the pencil line. Firmly press each of the 4 half square triangles open with the seam pressed towards the darker side of fabric. Lastly, carefully trim each half square triangle to a perfect 4.5 inch square using a set square ruler. Do this by placing the 45-degree line on the ruler along the center seam in the half square triangle unit. Line up the edges of the ruler so that they are sitting on the inside of the half square triangle. Trim off the first 2 edges along the right and top sides. Spin the block around and position up the 45-degree line in the same place as before, and with the bottom left edge of the ruler lined up against the 2 edges you've just cut. Trim off the last 2 edges along the right and top sides, and that's a perfect 4.5 inch half square triangle unit ready to go. Once all 4 of your half square triangle units have been trimmed, lay them and the 5 4.5 inch squares into the Contrary Wife design. When doing this, make sure to place the lighter sides of the half square triangles facing inwards towards the center of the block to achieve an eye-catching line running across the block. Start piecing the block together row by row by flipping the center half square triangle in the top row over onto one of the squares next to it. Pin the 2 squares evenly together and then sew a 1/4 inch seam along this edge. Gently press the seam towards the background corner square using a medium to hot steamy iron. Lay the squares back into place and flip over the last square in the row, ensuring all edges are sitting evenly together as you pin it into place. Sew a 1/4 inch seam along this edge and then press the seam towards the background corner square. From here, piece together the other 2 rows in the block in the same way, making sure to press all seams towards each of the background fabric squares. Once all 3 rows have been pieced together, flip the top row over onto the middle one. Take your time lining up and nesting each of the center seams together. They should feel smooth and flat when pinching your fingers between them. Pin the seams and the rest of the edge into place, and then sew a 1/4 inch seam down this edge, ensuring all of the seams are lying flat before sewing over them. Next, gently press the seam you've just sewn towards the top row of the block. Flip over the last row in the block and nest the center seams neatly together in the same way as before. Pin the rows into place and then sew one last 1/4 inch seam along this edge. Press the seam outwards towards the bottom row and then give the top of the block a good final press. Lastly, square up the block so that it measures 12.5 inches square. making sure not to cut too close to the outer points in your half square triangles. So there we have it. That is how you make this really cute and very sweet contrary wife block. I really quite like with this block how you get this really awesome effect going through it when you place all of the lighter squares pointing in the center of the block. I just really like that effect. I think it looks really cool. Now please keep sharing your awesome blocks with me. I absolutely love seeing what you guys are up to, and I also really love seeing all of the fabrics that you're choosing. Of all of the blocks that I've seen so far, all of you are doing such a wonderful job, and you should all be very proud of yourself. Be on the lookout for block number 4 coming out on Friday, and until then, thank you all so much for watching, and hope to see you another time very soon. Bye! The next block that we will be making is this gorgeous little one. It is called the Morning Star block. So of course the majority of this block is made using half square triangles, and then you just have 4 squares in each corner to make up the block.